My name is Heidi Walsh, and I'm 30 years old. Last month at a family dinner, my parents dropped a bombshell. "Stop being selfish," Mom snapped, slamming her fork down. "That store is a free house. Sell it to your brother or you're no longer our daughter." The room went silent. My brother smirked, thinking he'd won. The store worth $700,000 was my late husband's legacy. They thought I'd cave under their threats. I didn't. I just smiled, stood up, and walked out the door. They had no idea what was coming. A week later, they showed up at the store with a realtor expecting to take over. Oh, they wished they'd never set foot inside. Want to know why? Stick around, this gets wild. If you've ever faced a family ultimatum, share your story in the comments and smash that subscribe button for more drama. Before that dinner changed everything, my life was a different kind of story. I met Nolan Fisher, my husband, 7 years ago at a bustling Birmingham art fair. His easy laugh and sharp mind caught me off guard. We clicked instantly, trading ideas about design and sustainability over coffee. Nolan dreamed of opening a natural food store in 5 Points, a place where locals could buy organic produce and feel connected to their community. I was a freelance graphic designer juggling client deadlines, but his passion pulled me in. Together, we mapped out every detail of the store. Nolan handled the business side, securing a loan of $300,000 and negotiating with suppliers. I designed the logo, crafted signs, and built a brand that felt warm and authentic. After 2 years of late nights and shared dreams, the store opened, valued at $700,000. It was our pride, a symbol of our partnership. Nolan wasn't just a dreamer, he was a doer. He spent weekends sanding shelves, charming vendors with his sincerity, and sketching expansion plans on napkins. We'd sit in our tiny apartment laughing over takeout, plotting how the store could grow into a chain. I felt unstoppable with him by my side. My freelance work thrived, landing clients who loved my minimalist style, but the store was our true legacy. We talked about kids travel a bigger home someday. Those moments felt like they'd last forever. Then one stormy night, it all fell apart. Nolan was driving back from a supplier in Montgomery when a truck ran a red light. The police called at 1 in the morning. I raced to the hospital, heart pounding, but he was already gone. The grief was suffocating. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. But I kept the store running. Every product, every shelf held a piece of Nolan. Letting it go would have meant letting him go. Growing up, I was always invisible to Mom and Dad. They poured their attention into my brother, their perfect son. At 12, I won a state art competition, but they missed the award ceremony for his baseball tryouts. In high school, they bought him a brand new car while I scraped together cash for a secondhand laptop to start my design work. His C-average report cards earned glowing praise. My straight A's got a shrug. When I earned a scholarship to college, they didn't even attend my graduation. My brother, though, got a lavish party for barely passing. I learned to push forward alone, building my career without their support. Nolan was different. He saw my talent, cheered my victories, and believed I could do anything. Losing him left a void no one else could fill. Mom and Dad never valued the store. To them, it was just a paycheck, something to hand over to their favorite. They assumed I'd fold like I always had under their pressure. But this time, I wasn't that overlooked kid anymore. Nolan's memory gave me strength, and I wasn't about to let them take what we'd built. A week after that tense dinner, everything shifted. I sat in a small office downtown across from Lois Bennett, my lawyer. She adjusted her glasses and slid a document across the desk. "This is Nolan's will," she said, her voice steady. "He left the natural food store in 5 Points to you, Heidi. It's yours, legally and fully." The words hit me hard. The store, valued at $700,000, was Nolan's legacy, our shared dream. I'd kept it running since his death, pouring my heart into every decision. Lois explained the details: no liens, no disputes. Just my name on the title. I clutched the papers, feeling Nolan's trust in me all over again. My parents and brother had no claim, no matter what they thought. 2 days later, Mom and Dad showed up at my apartment unannounced. The doorbell rang and I opened it to find them standing there, arms crossed. Mom didn't waste time. "We heard about the will," she said, her tone sharp. "That store should help your brother not sit in your hands." Dad nodded, his face stern. "It's only fair. He needs it more." I stood frozen, gripping the doorframe. They hadn't even asked how I was coping without Nolan. The store wasn't just a business, it was my last connection to him. But to them, it was a cash machine for their favorite child. They pushed past me into the living room, settling on my couch like they owned the place. Mom leaned forward, her eyes narrowing. "Your brother has a chance to invest in a tech startup. It's his big break. Sell the store, split the money, and give him what he deserves." I stared, disbelief washing over me. Brent, lounging in the corner, chimed in. "Come on, Heidi, don't hog it. I could make millions with this." His smirk reminded me of every time Mom and Dad bailed him out: failed classes, wrecked cars, bad jobs. The store was worth $700,000, but they acted like it was pocket change for his dreams. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "The store's mine," I said, my voice firm. "Nolan left it to me, not him." Mom's face twisted. "You're being selfish, just like always." Dad stood, pointing a finger. "Think about family. Don't make us choose between you and your brother." The threat stung, but it wasn't new. They'd always chosen him. When I was 15, they paid for his summer camp while I worked part-time to afford art supplies. At 20, they covered his rent when he dropped out of college but ignored my graduation. Now they wanted to strip away Nolan's gift to me. I shook my head, my resolve hardening. "I'm not selling." Mom scoffed, grabbing her purse. "You'll regret this, Heidi." Dad followed her out, his silence louder than words. Brent lingered, tossing out a final jab. "You're making a big mistake." I closed the door behind them, my hands trembling. Their words echoed years of being overlooked, but this time I wasn't backing down. The store was more than money. It was Nolan's belief in me, something they'd never understand. Lois had warned me they might push harder. She'd seen families fracture over less. "Stay strong," she'd said, handing me her card. "Call if they try anything." I tucked it away, knowing I'd need her soon. My parents thought they could bully me into submission, but I was already planning my next move. The store was mine, and I'd protect it no matter what they threw at me. The air felt heavier after their visit, but I wasn't prepared for what came next. Mom didn't let my refusal stop her. By the following Monday, whispers started spreading through our small Birmingham community. I got a call from Mrs. Larson, our old neighbor, her voice dripping with judgment. "Heidi, I heard you're keeping that store all to yourself. Your brother needs help, you know." I mumbled a response, stunned. She barely knew me anymore, yet she spoke like I'd betrayed the family. Later that day, a text from my cousin Jenna popped up. "Why won't you share the store's money? Brent deserves a chance." I stared at my phone, my stomach twisting. Mom had gotten to her too. The rumors were relentless. Heidi's selfish, Heidi's greedy, Heidi's turning her back on family. Each word stung, painting me as the villain in a story I didn't write. By Wednesday, my inbox was flooded. Friends of Mom and Dad, people I hadn't spoken to in years, sent messages urging me to do the right thing. One email from Aunt Carla was particularly sharp. "Your parents raised you better than this. That store could set your brother up for life." I deleted it, my hands shaking. Even my old high school teacher, Mrs. Grant, called her tone soft but pointed. "Family comes first, Heidi. Don't let money tear you apart." I hung up, feeling the walls closing in. The store worth $700,000 wasn't just Nolan's legacy anymore. It was a weapon being used against me. Everywhere I turned, someone had an opinion, each one echoing Mom's narrative. I felt like I was drowning in their judgment. The worst came at a local coffee shop on Thursday. I ran into Sarah, a family friend who used to babysit me. She pulled me aside, her face tight with concern. "Heidi, everyone's talking. They say you're hoarding that store to spite your brother. Is it true? I forced a smile, muttering something about it being complicated, but her frown told me she'd already made up her mind. I left my coffee untouched and walked out, my chest tight. The community I'd grown up in, the one Nolan and I had built our store for, was turning its back on me. I stopped answering calls, letting them go to voicemail. The messages piled up 10, then 20, each one a variation of the same guilt trip. I felt isolated, like I'd been cast out of my own life. But not everyone bought into the rumors. Marla Reed, my best friend, showed up at my apartment that night with takeout and a fierce look in her eyes. "Don't let them get to you," she said, tossing her bag on the couch. "Your mom's spinning lies to wear you down." Marla had known me since college, back when I was scraping by on scholarships, while Mom and Dad funded Brent's every whim. She'd seen how they dismissed my achievements, how they'd left me to fend for myself. "That store's yours," she said, her voice firm. "Nolan wanted you to have it. Don't let them guilt you into giving it up." Her words were a lifeline, pulling me back from the edge. We spent hours talking, her support reminding me I wasn't alone. Marla's encouragement sparked an idea. I couldn't keep fighting this battle on their terms. The store was mine, but Mom and Dad wouldn't stop until they'd turned everyone against me. I needed a way out, one that would protect Nolan's legacy and shut them down for good. That's when I thought of Spencer Cole, my brother's boss. I'd known Spencer since high school. He was sharp, ambitious, and always had a knack for business. Brent worked for his tech startup, though he barely showed up half the time. I dug through old contacts and found Spencer's number. Late that night, I sent him a message. "Interested in a business deal. It's about the store." He replied within minutes, curious but cautious. "Let's meet," he wrote. I didn't tell Marla, not yet. This had to stay quiet. The next day, I met Spencer at a diner across town. He leaned back in the booth, his suit crisp despite the late hour. "What's this about, Heidi?" he asked, sipping his coffee. I took a deep breath and laid it out: the store, its value, my family's pressure. I didn't mention Brent's name, but Spencer knew. "I want to sell," I said, my voice steady. "But on my terms. I'd lease back the upstairs for my design studio." He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. We talked numbers, logistics, and timelines. By the end, he was nodding. "I'll have my lawyer draw up an offer," he said. I left the diner feeling lighter, like I'd taken back control. Mom and Dad thought they could break me with their whispers and guilt trips. They didn't know I was already one step ahead. Spencer's offer was my secret weapon, a way to keep the store's heart while cutting their leverage. I just had to hold on until the deal was done. The plan was in motion, and I was ready for their final push. On a crisp Friday morning, I was restocking shelves in the store when the bell above the door chimed. Mom and Dad stormed in, their faces set with determination. Behind them trailed Brent, looking smug, and Doris Clark, a local realtor with a clipboard tucked under her arm. I straightened up, wiping my hands on my apron. Mom didn't bother with pleasantries. "We're here to settle this," she declared, her voice cutting through the quiet store. "Doris has a buyer ready. You need to sign the papers today." Dad nodded, his jaw tight. "Enough games, Heidi. It's time to do what's right for your brother." I glanced at Doris, her pen poised over a stack of documents. The store worth $700,000 was their target, and they thought they had me cornered. Brent stepped forward, his tone dripping with confidence. "I've got big plans for that money. My startup's about to take off. You don't even care about this place." His words stung, but I kept my face neutral. They assumed I'd buckle under their pressure, just like always. Doris cleared her throat, offering a practiced smile. "I've got a cash offer ready, Heidi. It's a fair deal. You could walk away with a clean slate." I looked at her, then at my family, their eyes gleaming with expectation. They thought this was their moment of triumph, that I'd hand over Nolan's legacy without a fight. I took a deep breath and said, "You might want to hold off on that paperwork." Before they could respond, the back door swung open and Spencer walked in. He was calm, his suit sharp as always, but his presence shifted the room's energy. "Morning, Heidi," he said, then turned to my family. I'm Spencer Cole, the new owner of this store. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Mom's mouth dropped open. Dad froze, his hands clenching. Brent's smirk vanished, replaced by a look of pure shock. Doris fumbled her clipboard, her eyes darting between us. What do you mean? New owner Mom finally stammered. Spencer crossed his arms, his voice steady. I bought the store from Heidi last week. The deal's done, papers signed. It's mine now. I watched my family's faces crumble. Dad sputtered. This is outrageous. You can't just sell it without telling us. I stepped forward, my voice firm. I didn't need your permission. Nolan left it to me. Not you. Brent turned red, pointing at Spencer. You're my boss. How could you do this? Spencer raised an eyebrow. Business is business, Brent. You should know that by now. I let the moment sink in before dropping the next surprise. I'm leasing the upstairs space, I said, gesturing to the staircase. It's my new design studio. I'm staying right here. Mom's eyes widened, her voice shrill. You're leasing from him, after all we've done for you. I almost laughed. All they'd done was push me aside for years, favoring Brent at every turn. Now they were facing the consequences of their own game. Doris, clearly out of her depth, started packing her papers. I wasn't informed of any sale, she muttered, glancing at Mom. This changes everything. Spencer turned to Brent, his tone professional but cold. Since you're here, let's talk about your role. I need someone to manage inventory downstairs. You're hired starting Monday. Brent blinked, his face a mix of disbelief and anger. Work here for you, he spat. Spencer didn't flinch. Take it or leave it. I don't tolerate slackers. I watched Brent struggle, his ego bruised. He'd expected a windfall, not a job under his boss's thumb. Mom grabbed Dad's arm, her voice shaking. This isn't over, Heidi. You've made a terrible mistake. They turned to leave, Doris trailing behind, her deal in tatters. As the door slammed shut, I felt a weight lift. The store was no longer my burden, but I'd kept its heart. The upstairs space was perfect for my design work, quiet, bright, and mine. Spencer and I had agreed on a fair lease, giving me freedom to grow my career while he ran the business below. The dust had barely settled when my family's next move unfolded. Brent started working at the store the following Monday, hired by Spencer as a freelancer to manage inventory. I'd see him every morning, slouched behind a counter, his eyes avoiding mine. The tension was palpable. He'd shuffle past my design studio upstairs, muttering under his breath whenever I passed by with a client's mock-up in hand. One day, as I arranged a new logo display, he snapped, "You think you're so clever, don't you?" I ignored him, focusing on my work, but his resentment hung heavy in the air. The store, once a haven for Nolan's dream, now felt like a battleground. Brent's presence was a daily reminder of Mom and Dad's favoritism, their belief that he deserved what I'd fought to keep. Yet I held my ground, sketching designs in my studio, determined to make it my own space. Downstairs, Brent's work was sloppy. He miscounted shipments, misplaced orders, and barely spoke to the staff. Spencer noticed, pulling me aside one afternoon. "He's not cut out for this," he said, shaking his head. "I gave him a chance because you asked, but he's on thin ice." I nodded, unsurprised. Brent had always relied on Mom and Dad to clean up his messes: failed ventures, unpaid bills, half-hearted jobs. Now, under Spencer's watch, there was no one to bail him out. I felt a strange mix of pity and resolve. He was my brother, but I couldn't let his failures drag me down. Each day as I walked past him to my studio, I steeled myself against his glares, focusing on the designs that were slowly rebuilding my career. Meanwhile, Mom and Dad weren't done fighting. They hired a lawyer, a slick attorney named Roger Tate, to challenge the sale of the store. I got a call from Lois Bennett, my lawyer, one evening. They're claiming the sale to Spencer was fraudulent. She said, her voice calm but firm. They're saying you coerced him under duress. I nearly laughed at the absurdity. Coerced Spencer. The man who'd built a tech startup from scratch. I met Lois at her office the next day, a small space cluttered with legal files. She spread out the contract I'd signed with Spencer, pointing to each clause. "This is ironclad," she said. "The sale was notarized, witnessed, and filed properly. They don't have a case." I exhaled, relief washing over me. Lois's confidence was a shield protecting the choice I'd made to honor Nolan's legacy in my own way. The lawsuit dragged on for weeks, eating up my parents' savings. They called me late one night, their voices sharp over the phone. "You're tearing this family apart," Mom accused, her words laced with venom. Dad chimed in. "We're doing this for your brother's future. Why can't you see that?" I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. "You've never cared about my future?" I said quietly. "This store was Nolan's gift to me, not Brent." They hung up, but their anger lingered, a reminder of the rift that had grown too wide to bridge. Lois kept me updated, her emails a steady stream of reassurance. "Their lawyers grasping at straws," she wrote after a court hearing. "The judge isn't buying it." I trusted her, but the stress of the lawsuit weighed on me, making every day at the store feel heavier. The community, once swayed by Mom's rumors, started to shift. Clara Evans, my neighbor, stopped by the store one morning with a batch of homemade cookies. "I heard what your parents are doing," she said, her eyes kind but fierce. "They've been telling everyone you cheated them, but I know better. You've always been the hard worker." Her words warmed me, a rare moment of support in a sea of doubt. Later that week, Leonard Hayes, a local grocer who'd known Nolan, pulled me aside at a farmer's market. "Your folks are spinning lies," he said, his voice gruff. "Nolan built that store for you, not them." I told everyone at the co-op the truth. Clara and Leonard's support spread their voices, countering Mom's narrative. Customers started returning, their smiles genuine as they bought produce and chatted about my designs. The tide was turning slowly but surely. Brent's attitude didn't help his cause. He showed up late, ignored Spencer's instructions, and snapped at customers. One afternoon, I overheard him arguing with a cashier over a misplaced delivery. "This isn't my fault," he shouted, storming off. Spencer called him into the office, his patience clearly waning. I didn't eavesdrop, but Brent's slumped shoulders as he left told me everything. My studio upstairs became my sanctuary, a place where I could focus on my work without his bitterness. I landed a new client, a local cafe needing branding, and spent hours sketching logos, each stroke a step toward reclaiming my life. Lois called me a month later with the final verdict. "The judge dismissed their case," she said, her voice triumphant. "The sale stands. Your parents have no legal claim." I sank into a chair, the weight of the past months lifting. Mom and Dad's last attempt to take what wasn't theirs had failed. They'd spent thousands of dollars on a lawyer only to lose. I imagined their faces, the realization that their golden child wouldn't get his way this time. Brent, stuck working under Spencer, had no choice but to face the consequences of his own lack of effort. Clara and Leonard's support grew stronger. They organized a small event at the store, inviting locals to see my design work displayed upstairs. "You're part of this community," Clara told me as we set up. "Don't let them make you feel otherwise." Their kindness, paired with Lois's legal victory, gave me a sense of closure. I'd protected Nolan's legacy not by clinging to the store, but by carving out my own path. Brent's daily presence was a challenge, but I was stronger than his resentment. The store was no longer mine, but my studio was, and it was thriving. Brent's tenure at the store didn't last long. By the end of the second month, his carelessness had reached a breaking point. Spencer called him into the office one rainy afternoon, his face stern. I wasn't there, but the cashier, Emily, overheard the conversation through the thin walls. Brent had botched another inventory count, costing the store thousands of dollars in misplaced stock. "You're done," Spencer told him, his voice firm. "I can't afford your mistakes." Brent stormed out, his face flushed with anger, tossing his apron on the counter. He didn't look at me as he left, but I felt a quiet relief. His failure wasn't my burden anymore. Spencer later confirmed it, shaking his head. "I gave him a fair shot, Heidi. He blew it." Brent's contract was terminated, leaving him without the job he'd resented from the start. The fallout hit Mom and Dad hard. They'd pinned their hopes on Brent, believing the store's sale would fund his dreams. Now, with him jobless again, their frustration boiled over. I heard through Clara, my neighbor, that they were selling their house in Birmingham. They're moving to Georgia, she told me one evening, her voice low. Some small town where your aunt lives. They're done with this place. I nodded, unsurprised. Mom and Dad hadn't spoken to me since the lawsuit failed. Their last text, a curt message from Mom, read, "You've made your choice." I didn't respond. Their silence was their final act of rejection, but it no longer stung. They'd chosen Brent over me for years, and now they were leaving, chasing another chance to fix his life. I focused on my own path. My design studio upstairs was thriving with new clients calling weekly. Marla had been my rock, and one day she pitched an idea over coffee. "Let's go into business together," she said, her eyes bright. "You handle design, I'll manage marketing. We could take on bigger projects." I hesitated, remembering the risks of partnerships, but Marla's loyalty had never wavered. We shook hands on it, forming Reed and Walsh Creative. Our first project was a rebrand for a local bakery, and the response was overwhelming. Customers loved the sleek logos and vibrant packaging, and soon we were fielding inquiries from businesses across Alabama. Marla's knack for promotion paired perfectly with my designs, and for the first time I felt like I was building something truly mine. The store itself had transformed under Spencer's management. He'd kept its core fresh produce organic goods, but added modern touches like a coffee bar and community events. My studio upstairs became a draw, with clients visiting to see my work displayed alongside the store's rustic charm. One evening, as I locked up a regular customer, Mrs. Thompson stopped me. "This place feels alive again," she said, smiling. "Nolan would be proud." Her words hit deep. The store, once a battleground, had become a symbol of my independence. I wasn't its owner anymore, but my presence through my designs and my lease kept Nolan's spirit alive. The community, once swayed by Mom's lies, now saw me for who I was, someone who'd fought for her place and won. Brent's absence left the store quieter, and my family's departure left my life calmer. I didn't hear from Mom or Dad after they moved, and Brent's social media went silent. Clara mentioned he'd taken a low-paying job in Georgia, far from the startup dreams he'd chased. I felt no satisfaction in their struggles, only a sense of closure. They'd tried to take everything from me, Nolan's legacy, my community, my peace, but I'd held my ground. My studio, my partnership with Marla, and the store's new life were proof of that. As I hung a new design in my studio, a local magazine featured Reed and Walsh Creative in a spread about Birmingham's rising entrepreneurs. Marla framed the article, hanging it on our office wall. "We're just getting started," she said, grinning. I smiled back, feeling a weightlessness I hadn't known in years. The battles with my family had forged me, but they no longer defined me. I'd built a life on my terms, one sketch at a time. 6 months later, the store was my sanctuary. I stood in my design studio, sunlight streaming through the windows, illuminating a new project pinned to the wall. The past year had been a crucible, forging me into someone stronger, someone who knew her worth. My family, Mom, Dad, and Brent, were gone, not just from Birmingham, but from my life. I'd made the choice to cut ties, not out of anger, but because I deserved peace. Their demands, their favoritism, their attempts to take what Nolan had left me, it all belonged to a past I no longer carried. I'd sent one final message to Mom months ago, a simple note. "I wish you well, but I'm done." There was no reply, and I didn't expect one. The silence was my freedom. The store below buzzed with life, its shelves stocked with organic goods, its coffee bar drawing crowds. My studio upstairs had become more than a workspace. It was my proof of resilience. I'd fought to keep this space not just for me, but for the dream Nolan and I had shared. Every logo I designed, every client I met, was a step toward a future I'd built on my terms. The store's value, once pegged at $700,000, was no longer a number to fight over. It was a symbol of what I'd protected, not by owning it, but by carving out my place within it. Spencer ran the business well, and my lease ensured I'd stay creating without interference. Marla and I had turned Reed and Walsh Creative into a local success. We'd landed contracts with restaurants, boutiques, and even a startup in mobile. One afternoon, as we reviewed a new pitch, she leaned back and said, "You've changed, Heidi. You're not just surviving, you're thriving." I smiled, knowing she was right. The battles with my family had taught me to stand firm, to value my own voice. I'd learned that protecting my rights didn't mean shutting out love, it meant loving myself enough to say no. Marla, with her unwavering support, had been there through every step, reminding me I wasn't alone. The community had embraced me fully. Clara stopped by weekly, often with a new neighbor in tow, eager to see my latest designs. Leonard, ever gruff but kind, sent customers my way, boasting about my work at his grocery store. Their support, along with the regulars who filled the store, made it clear I belonged here. The rumors Mom had spread were forgotten, replaced by stories of my persistence. One evening, a young artist visited my studio, her eyes wide with admiration. "I heard how you stood up to your family," she said. "It gives me hope." Her words stayed with me, a reminder that my story wasn't just mine, it could inspire others. I thought often about Nolan, about the life we'd planned. He'd believed in me when I doubted myself, and this store, this studio, was my way of honoring him. But it was also more than that. It was my declaration of independence, a testament to choosing myself over guilt, over pressure, over a family that never saw my worth. I'd learned to set boundaries, to fight for what was mine, and to live authentically without apology. The pain of losing my family stung, but it was a price I'd paid for my freedom. I wasn't bitter, I was whole. As I locked up the store one night, I paused at the door, looking up at the sign Nolan and I had chosen years ago. It stood proud, a beacon of everything I'd overcome. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine, built from courage and conviction. I turned to the world beyond, to anyone listening, and thought of the battles we all face. What's your story of standing up? Share it, your voice matters.